Ryan Updike and Chris Pajecki. We're going to talk to you today about a reading strategy for a New York Times article called A Prom Divided.
We asked ourselves, work, working backwards, we asked ourselves, what do we want our students to know also? And there are some questions that we came up with, and in order we would like students to look at the images, come up with some questions about the images, and then see if the text supports these images. And then we would also like students to connect this article to the past.
Some larger themes, right?
To some larger themes, yeah. So we could start here. Uh, Ryan, what do we notice here about this picture?
Well, I think the first thing I kind of noticed, Mr. Pajecki, is that these are all African American students. Um, they're all dressed up for their prom. I don't know whether there's no caption that tells me whether is this the only prom they're having. Is I wondered if this is the only thing I'm going to see as far as are there white kids at this prom? Is it only one? I mean, is this an all black school? That's what I thought right away, seeing this picture without reading the piece.
Now that image of the two girls, Ryan, if we could go back to that for a second, does this tell us anything?
Um, not not really. Just it seems like it's showing like African American students going to a prom, I guess. But I noticed there's not been any interracial pictures yet.
Absolutely. It doesn't tell us a lot, but it is one more picture that
Seems to be reinforcing a kind of a difference or separation.
very good, very good. Let's move on. Okay. Well, what do we notice different about this picture from the other pictures?
Well, here we see some white students from
Okay.
Montgomery County.
Okay. Are they dressed the same? Is it the same time period, would we say?
Same time period, yes.
Okay. Um, Let me ask you this. Are you starting to form with the image here of the white students, are you starting to form any questions in your mind as to why the images, about the images, and what are those questions?
Well, I kind of wondered today why they would have so much. Uh, so there'd be a difference today. I mean, my idea of a prom is that there's one prom, and it seems here that there's two different cultures, or at least two different ideas of a prom.
Good, very good. These last two pictures are interesting. Let's look at these for a second. These two images are different from the other images we saw.
They actually have a caption that explains it to us.
They do. That's a very good point. Also, this is at the actual event, whereas the other pictures are prior to the event. The other ones, we couldn't say for sure that segregation was a factor, but here at the event itself, can we start to assume that segregation is a factor?
Yeah, it says that Nisha Bell Sr. was voted queen of the black prom.
Mm-hmm.
And then down below the one where the parents are crowded around the building, it seems to say that there was the white students parade into their prom, meaning that there was a separate prom.
Okay.
So quickly we get the idea. Well, most students will be able to pick up that there's two different functions here changing.
Well, let's get into the content of what we would be studying in class, Ryan. Is segregation legal?
No.
No. So immediately, would we be wondering why this is taking place then?
I think we would. I know our high school's not that way.
Okay.
We don't have two proms. We wanted to end our talk on reading strategy today with how we would use this as student teachers in the classroom. How do we plan on using text and using pre-reading activities that center on images?
But a way that I came up with that I think might work is talking about segregation or anything, talking about any topic that kids may have a hard time understanding how segregation ever existed. It's difficult to imagine. I would use this as almost like a living history, and they may say, kids may ask questions like, well, how was this justified? How did this go on when so many people disagreed with it? I would have this article and maybe, because there are a lot of parallels here to segregation and stuff prior to the 1960s and 70s, and say, well, this is probably not much different, and maybe give kids a good idea of how social constructions came into play and still remain in place.
Yeah.
Alright, so we're going to be talking about some after reading strategies here in our little section of the video. We're doing this so that the student can have some extended meanings and feel a little more connection with the text that they're reading. And the specific strategy that we're using is the Likert scale. The Likert scale. This is where a student reads a statement, then decides how much they agree or disagree with it, and then mark or circle the term that indicates that level of agreement. Alright, now kind of how to use the Likert scale. The students will engage in elaborated discussion about what they have read. And then that kind of leads us into why to use it. It encourages students to think, explain their choice by citing evidence from the text, from personal experience, or from outside knowledge. And it really lets the student connect with the text and makes them think about what they've read instead of just reading words and not actually thinking about anything. Now, as for some tips for use for the Likert scale, you only want to use between 4 and 6 items. That way your students don't get overwhelmed, especially struggling readers, as they'll see too many and then just get overwhelmed and bogged down. Alright.
Okay, so racially segregated proms such as those in Montgomery County are tolerable.
I would have to disagree, seeing as how my prom was integrated. And I didn't really have a problem with it. I thought it was fun. All of the different students from different backgrounds. And although I can't speak for those people, you know, I don't know their traditions or anything, so I would hesitate to strongly disagree, but I would disagree.
Now, would you be upset if some of your friends of different races weren't able to come to the same prom?
Yeah, see, I don't think that would be fair. I think I'd be upset if my friends, you know, they're different races, couldn't come and have a good time with us. That wouldn't make any sense to me.
Okay, next question. Segregated proms are acceptable if the events and venues are comparable.
Yeah, I'd have to disagree again. A lot of the same reasons as the last one. You know, you still have different proms, even though they're equal. That doesn't make them the same. They're not together. So I don't think that's right. So I have to disagree.
So the separate but equal doesn't apply?
No, I don't think that works out too well if everybody can't be together.
Okay. Now, in the rural South, there are unspoken rules which continue to dictate social interactions. Do you agree or disagree?
I agree with that, definitely, because, I mean, I grew up in a pretty small southern town, so I kind of know how that works. There's definitely unspoken rules, which well, sometimes they're spoken. It depends on who you ask. But I definitely agree with that. I think there's a lot of rules in society about who you can and can't hang out with and date and that kind of thing.
Okay. Can you give an example of that?
My grandparents probably would have left if I ever brought a girl home that was of a different race. Like left the dinner table and not come back and not been very happy about it.
Alright, well, the next one. Students today are not racist. Rather, it's their parents and previous generations who continue to dictate social relations.
I'd have to disagree with that, because I feel like if the students truly weren't racist, then they would do something to change this. They're still having this problem like that, and the white kids don't seem all that upset about it. So I feel like they probably are racist. They just blame it on their parents.
So if they weren't, they would stand up to their parents and
Definitely.
make some changes?
Right. I mean, it's easy to say you got it from your parents, and they could have got it from your parents, but it doesn't change the fact that they still are being racist.
Okay. Do you think it's less so than previous generations, or?
I would think it's less so, but it's still there and still prevalent.
Okay. Final question. Seniors in high school should be permitted to attend prom with whomever they choose.
I'd have to strongly agree on that one. It's because, I mean, you know, coming from a guy who gotta take whomever you can get, really. So, you know, can't really limit your playing field by ruling people out if you should be able to go to prom with.
Very cool.